the Baltimore Ravens, the 1 seed, trying to figure out what they're going to do this weekend, Saturday afternoon. Steelers at Ravens. Steelers still need to win to have a chance to get in, and it's standalone early game, so all they know is we got to win. Ravens don't have to do anything. If they're not interested in seeing the Steelers again in the playoffs, they would be wise to try to knock them out, but you want to keep your guys healthy. You don't want. I think, Chris, what happened to Bradley Chubb in garbage time on Sunday, down 49-19.
Yeah.
Bradley Chubb tears the ACL. Inexcusable. Shouldn't have been on the field. That now becomes the context for these decisions that are being made by both the Ravens and the 49ers. 1 seed locked up. What do we do? But we saw it 4 years ago. They took the foot off the gas for the final week of the regular season. Then they had their bye. Then the Titans came to town in the divisional round and beat them. That's the concern. You get out of your habits, you get out of your routine, you get out of your rhythm, and you can't just snap your fingers and bring it back. That's the heart of the challenge for the coach.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough one. And it's even tougher, I think, to your point, when you see a bad injury like Bradley Chubb on your field right in front of your face. And it's a reminder, certainly. But I still think the big picture here, and of course, you want to do your best to try to keep players healthy and be at your best for the playoffs. And you got to kind of look at each player individually, right? If there's guys that have, been banged up, okay, hey, you're not playing. That's it. But if you got, generally you're pretty healthy, you're somewhere in that 98% to 100% healthy zone, you know my thoughts on this, Mike. Play football. I get too scared of what you just kind of described, what happened to them in versus the Tennessee Titans in that first-round playoff game, their divisional playoff game a few years ago. Tennessee had played a playoff game, right? It was against the New England Patriots, of course. So it was Tom Brady last home playoff game. Vrabel going against Belichick. They were in playoff mode. They already knew what the intensity level was. Baltimore, it took them like 2.5 quarters to figure out, oh crap, we're in a playoff game. We got to turn it on. And as I always bring up with you, just the great Patriot teams through the first 2 decades of this century, they always played a little bit in these situations, at least a half if they were the 1 seed and had it locked up. So I err on playing and kind of keeping, your team tight, or not tight, but, hitting on all cylinders to where it's not too long of a layoff in that divisional game.
And Kyle Shanahan talked about this yesterday from the perspective of the 49ers. Even Sean McVay talked about it because they're in.
Yeah, they're in it now.
And this game.
Right.
Yeah, they like, are you going to rest your guys too and get them ready for the playoffs? And it's not just as easy as saying we're going to give our starters time off. You've got only so many practice squad moves you can make. You've still got to put guys on the field.
Yeah,
you got to have 48 in uniform. And your practice week is part of your routine. So you're going to practice the guys who are going to play. So it's not just we're not playing. See, I think the genius of what Bill Belichick did, it forced them to still stay in their regular practice week routine.
Right.
They're not shutting it down altogether.
Right. Yes.
And they're not just playing very much on game day, but they went through all the stuff ahead of time.
Very important.
So that part of it won't be foreign to them. Because, look, I mean, the psychology of it, the pressure of it. Think about the pressure. Once the playoffs start, the records go out the window. All that matters is the seeding. And you've earned the number 1 seed. You had a special season. You fought and scratched and clawed and won, and now you're the top seed. And you feel it all starting to evaporate in that 3 hours. And you know how fast it goes during a game. You only get so many opportunities to possess the ball, and the other team's moving the ball, and they're scoring points, and you feel like you're just kind of in a fog or in a daze, and the next thing you know, you're playing from behind, and what the hell is this? And then you get to that point in the third or fourth quarter where you think, oh, crap, we're going to lose this game. And that's not how your special season is supposed to end, but the opponent doesn't care. The opponent has nothing to lose. The opponent has no pressure. The opponent's playing with house money. And I really do think that's why we see the 1 seed lose as often as we do.
Sure.
The 1 seed should never lose. They lose, and there was a time when it was about 50% of the time they lost. I think it's less than that now. But they're vulnerable, I think, because of that landing of the plane late in the regular season, How do you stay sharp? That's the challenge. And the good news for the Ravens is they just went through this 4 years ago. So they'll at least have that framework for being on guard against getting themselves caught flat-footed in the divisional round.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think, that game has still got to be very prevalent in John Harbaugh's mind, and even Lamar Jackson, and the fact of finding that right touch. You bring up the right points there. It's not just the game. It's the week of practice, right? It's everything. It's about keeping in routine. It's about staying on little small details that can get lost in a relaxed week, right? That's the big thing. It's the process in which has been making us so awesome. And hey, we're on a winning streak and we've been doing it like this for 8 weeks. And now we break it up. And okay, now we want to come back the week after and replicate that, but it's not the same. We kind of took a little off and our week's a little different. I was on a number 1 seed team once in my life. I can speak to it a little bit, right? I've always told you the Tennessee Titan team I was on in 2018 was 2008 was the best team I was ever on in my NFL career, right? We had a similar scenario. Last game of the year, played the Indianapolis Colts and Peyton Manning in a game that meant nothing, right? So during that week, it was a relaxed week to end the regular season. It wasn't a full, hey, starters, practice, we're really preparing to win this football game. It was a little bit of like, hey, starters, get some reps. Hey, now backups, get in because you're going to play this week and get some reps. So you do that. Then now it becomes the bye week. Everybody's getting ready for the wild card game, but you're the number 1 seed. So now practice that week. Yeah, you have practice, but it's not quite as intense. It's not the normal routine. It is a few extra days off here and there. And now it's, oh, hey, we're back for the playoff game, and hey, we're relaxed and we feel good and this is awesome and the energy's all there. But the other team, like you've said so many times, is wound up tight and already been in the battle and already know and been doing this for like 3 weeks in a row now. And now they're in that groove we just talked about with the number 1 seed that's going, hey, we had it rolling at the end of the season. We were doing all this week after week after week. Now they're playing a team that's in that groove, and they've taken themselves out of that groove. Sorry to talk so long and explain it, but it's still something that I remember to this day, and I'll never forget. It's part of the reason why you hear me always talk about don't rest your guys too much in week 18 here. You got to play and stay sharp for all the reasons that you've explained here.
And here's the I think fundamental problem. I mentioned this yesterday on the PFTPM podcast. If you play your starter and you get a Bradley Chubb situation, you're never going to hear the end of it.
Yeah, that's
ever.
the problem
rest
too.
them,
that's right.
And you eventually lose. Most fans aren't going to do the dotted line, the breadcrumb trail back to, oh, if you just would have played your starters in Week 18.
You're right. That's a valid point.
You're less likely to get criticized for resting your starters and losing than playing your starters and losing one of them. Even if you win, even if you still win, you're never going to live down the fact that you played that guy and he suffered an injury and you didn't have him available to you for the rest of the playoff run. So I think that is a big part of it as well. And the other thing, too, that the Ravens are going to have to do, because all that stuff that came out of the stupid things I said 2 weeks ago about the 49ers and the Ravens, well documented, no reason to relitigate that. It gave them kind of lightning in a bottle that they've clearly harnessed, and it clearly lingered into the game against the Dolphins, definitely for one of the people in the stands. It's not, it's like, even though I picked the Ravens to beat the Dolphins, that doesn't matter at this point. There it is. They still are salty about it. And I think they want to stay salty about it. Well, being salty about what I said about the Christmas night game isn't going to matter in the postseason. They need to find something else to get salty about. Whether it's people in the media who start to say, hey, Lamar Jackson can't win in the playoffs. I'm not saying it. I'm saying that if people in sports media start saying it, I'm not going to make it easy for you this time, John Harbaugh. I made it easy for you last time. I'm not making it easy for you. You're going to have to earn it this time. It's going to be somebody other than me that gives it to you. But they're going to have to be looking for something like that to kind of put gas back in that tank, because the fumes are gone of victories fueled by the stupid thing I said. the reset button is coming. Whether it's week 18 or whether it's the bye week when they're not playing in the wild card round, that's over. They need something else to put the chip back on their shoulder.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's part of what the challenge is, to get them ready for whoever it is that comes in to see them in the divisional round.
Yeah, I agreed. You're right. And we talked about it a little bit last week, and I think, again, it showed itself on Sunday. Whether it's you saying stupid stuff on a podcast, or, whether it's just the fear of the team they're playing, that is when they're at their best, right? I mean, we've kind of discussed that a little bit. It was, oh no, Detroit's coming into town. They're one of the best teams in football. Oh, it's the 49ers. We're underdogs. Oh, it's the Seattle Seahawks, who were hot at the time with Geno Smith and the offense and everything going. Oh, we're going to blow them out. I mean, so there is something about, when they have a little fear or motivation or chip, whatever you want to talk about, they play their best football, and they got to find a way to, like you're talking about, replicate that so they can have that same sort of intensity, focus, whatever, because the last 2 weeks is, this is, we've only talked about the 49ers the whole year, of a team that's looked like that good, that high level of a football play, 2 games in a row. And that's where it's impressive, and let's see if they can, find the way to keep that magic going.
And see, Ravens fans would say, we've been doing it all year, you just haven't paid attention. Because that's what I've been hearing for the last couple of weeks. And I wouldn't have picked the 49ers to win
that's not
handily on Christmas night.
Right.
Well, look what they did to the Seahawks. Look what they did to the Lions.
Sure.
That's the
two
arguing
big
points that they make.
Right.
Right. And also, what did it for me, and I think this is where I got sideways, I wasn't as impressed by their win over the Rams as I should have been, because the Rams have become one of the best teams in football. I thought that maybe they should have made quicker work of the Rams. I thought the fact that it felt like the Rams were going to win that game in the rain in December in Baltimore, that was kind of like, even though you won that game, I'm not impressed by what you did. I should have been more impressed by it, because the Rams are better than we realized.
Yep.
And the Ravens have that willingness, that ability, that focus. They just do what needs to be done. And they're learning from their mistakes, and that's going to be the key going into the playoffs. Can they learn from what happened in 2019? I don't know how many of the same guys are still there. There's a lot of turnover every year, but it's the same head coach, the same quarterback, and the pieces around them. They need to help educate them on what happened 4 years ago and how we avoid it happening again whenever the divisional round rolls around and whenever they're out there, whoever comes in. That's the thing. The level of the opponent may provide some incentive, some motivation.
That's right, too.
Who knows? I think
Right.
you're more likely to get caught flat-footed by somebody that you look at and say, oh, we can handle them. You want to have some element that's going to get your full focus and attention, because what you're saying is when you have the Ravens' full focus and attention, you've already lost.
Yes, right. Like if it was, the Chiefs coming to town, the divisional round, maybe even the Browns, somebody like that, right? That kind of wakes them up, perks them up. I think that would be the type of thing that would benefit them. I know that'll be scary for sure. But, Mike, back to what you just said too, right? I mean, I picked the 49ers to win the football game against the Ravens. The Ravens, yeah. I mean, again, maybe we should have given more credit for the Rams, certainly. But the Jaguar game was not great the week before that. It was kind of like, okay. The Charger game before the Ram game, I mean, the Chargers, that game was there to be had for them to upset the Ravens. So they had played a few games that were kind of like, oh, man, where's the top-level, high-level team that we saw against the Lions? And I think that's why you and I both went against the 49ers, who were kind of that hot team and in that streak at that moment. Here's the other thing I'll throw out to you, Mike, here, right? Bringing back this whole conversation, do you play your guys in the end of this season? And I'm totally going off the top of my head here, but I'm usually pretty good in these departments, as long as it's not a Simsism. Have we had a team that's won the Super Bowl here in recent history that hasn't really played the last regular season game and done all that thing? I don't think we have, really. I don't, every team that's won the Super Bowl here has kind of had to play Week 18 for some reason here for, I think, a pretty good stretch now. And I think that could almost prove it to a point too, right? And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going through Kansas City, Tampa Bay, right? Yeah. And I mean, of course, the Eagles last year didn't play, and of course, what happened to them? So that's I'm just trying to rack my brain here, but I feel like there's not a lot of success stories with rest week 18, and we're going to go on a playoff run and win the Super Bowl that I can remember here in recent history.
I'm thinking of the Rams. I can't remember what happened with the Rams week 18, 2021.
I'm pretty sure they had a play.
Won that game 27-24 in overtime. The Rams were up 17-0, and the 49ers came back and won week 18, 2021. And Matthew Stafford, 32 passes thrown, so he played in that game. Sony Michel, Cooper Kupp, the starters were in that game. So there was what, better seeding for them involved, I think, that year. Yeah. It wasn't necessarily right. They could have been like maybe the 3 seed or maybe even the 2 seed that year, I think, if some things fell out the right way. Instead, they end up being the 4 seed because they lose to the 49ers, who needed to get in, and then therefore they were on the road playing Tampa in the divisional round. So, I do remember them having to play, that's for sure. And beating Tampa in Tampa was one of the keys to being at home for the NFC Championship, where the 49ers came back and they beat them. I remember there's a big 49ers takeover now. I remember that at SoFi Stadium, the final week of the season. It was embarrassing to the Rams, and it wasn't quite as bad in the NFC Championship when they got the win. Here's another element, too, because I've been sitting here thinking about the teams that would get the full focus and attention naturally of the Ravens in the AFC playoff.
Yeah,
right.
And
the fact that they lost at home to the Browns is going to help.
Yes.
The fact that they lost at home to the Colts, if the Colts somehow sneak through the cracks, that's going to help. I think the teams that would be the most dangerous, because if the Chiefs show up, you're going to have your full focus and attention. If the Bills show up, full focus and attention. I think if the Dolphins come back, then it may not be quite as easy the next time around, because you had it so easy with them just a few weeks earlier. If the Texans are the team that comes in, the Ravens beat them in Baltimore all the way back in week 1.
Yeah.
And if the Jaguars come in, because they just beat the Jaguars not that long ago, those are the 3 teams where you're going to have to go over the top a little bit to get the full focus and attention of the Ravens. It's not going to naturally be there.
Yeah, I agree with your thought there. I do. I think that would be, I'd worry about, you're right, Dolphins coming around, divisional round. Oh, we already smoked them once. We'll kick their butt again, right? And we know how that goes, right? Again, even in the NFL, these blowout losses, wins, they're not, like Pee Wee football. It's 3 or 4 plays, really. Really all it comes down to where you go, ooh, those 3 plays don't happen. The game would have been a lot different. And, of course, Miami would be highly motivated. So I would agree with your assessment there. Those would be the teams that I would think would scare them or at least get their attention the most.
The Bills and the Ravens did not play this year. In October 2022, Buffalo went to Baltimore and won 23-20. So there's a little bit of a history there, but it's not immediate recent history.
And the Bills beat them in the playoffs.
And the Dolphins
a few years ago. Right.
So that's a little something that will help the Ravens be ready for the Bills if it is the Bills. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.